Hi everybody, so I've got a joke for you. A cardiologist died and was given an elaborate funeral, like all the bells and whistles, really big funeral. A huge heart, covered in flowers, stood behind the casket during the service. Following the eulogy, the heart opened and the casket rolled inside. The heart then closed, sealing the doctor inside the beautiful heart forevermore. At that point, one of the mourners burst into laughter, and when all eyes stared at him, he said, "I'm truly sorry. I was just thinking of my own funeral. I'm a gynecologist." The proctologist, well, he fainted. Today, JK Rowling, should she be in prison? Taylor Swift aligns herself with Kamala Harris. Mummy, I don't want to be a boy. And the woke culture. What's it all about? All that and more on this episode of the Mind, Body, and Soul podcast. Roll those credits.
Mind, body, soul. Mind, body, soul. Let the music roll. Feel the rhythm grow. Mind, body, soul. Mind, body, soul. Let the music roll. Feel the rhythm grow. Mind, body, soul.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls and children of all ages, welcome to another exciting episode of the Mind, Body, and Soul podcast with me, your lovable host, all the way from sunny Scotland, John Morris, the artist, author, and mental health mentor. I had to pause there to remember all the different titles, but ultimately what's more important is it's Thursday afternoon, it's 4:30 here in the UK, and I'm here once more to talk about and react to some of the very bizarre things in our world right now that's going on right now. We've had a lot of comments from last week's show. Specifically, if you haven't seen it, it was about abortion, the whole spiel. It was also about freedom of speech and also the cashless cultures that we're entering into. But more so from that, it was about abortion. And some of the things that have come forward that really have leapt out to me this week can be surmised in one simple phrase. You cannot be a Christian and or a person of faith, a person really of decent human standing, and be so passionately for abortion. You just cannot. And yet Kamala Harris is, in very, very interesting ways and terms, and using that as part of her political strategy. It's been an interesting week because we're talking about alignment in this first section of the show. Now, what we mean by alignment is a political figurehead, Donald Trump, Kamala Harris, will go out and usually get themselves a speaker, a singer, a wrestler, a former COO of various organizations. And of course, Donald Trump went out and got himself Linda McMahon, the former wife of wrestling billionaire and wrestling legend and highly controversial figure, especially now, Vincent Kennedy McMahon, who's entitled or is engaged in a massive sex scandal that we've already covered on a different show. And he also got himself Hulk Hogan, who this past week has done himself more disservice and more trouble, harm, problems, whatever you want to call it, than anything before. Many people are now suggesting that Hulk Hogan actually just needs, the best thing that he can do is just to zip it. That's honestly, and Terry Hulk, phenomenal brand, phenomenal person, but there's a lot of stuff that's now coming out that he's saying, that he's doing, that's highly questionable. So Trump went out and aligned himself with celebrities like Hulk Hogan and WWE, of course, the highly controversial. Kamala Harris, of course, went out and aligned herself with Taylor Swift. And that's really what we want to focus on in this portion of the conversation, because Taylor Swift has a mass following. And the big question this week that the news broadcasters around the world have been asking is, will Taylor Swift's influence ultimately have bearing on how the political campaign will run? This is what they had to say.
Pop icon Taylor Swift announced that she was endorsing Vice President Harris. We sent our own Sue O'Connell out to Boston's Back Bay just to see if people thought that that endorsement would have an impact.
You guys care that Taylor Swift endorsed Kamala Harris?
Yeah, sure, I care.
How? Why?
Why? Because I think it's going to bring in more votes for our gal.
Do you care about Taylor Swift endorsing Kamala Harris?
Yeah, I think this could be seismic. I don't know of any other celebrity who has as substantial an impact on their fan base as Swift, and I'm glad that she's finally using that platform, as many artists have done in decades past.
So what do you think about the Taylor Swift effect? Do you think it's actually going to do something, or is it just already talking to people who are going to vote for her? What do you think?
Some people are saying Taylor Swift spoke out a little too late, but I think now might be the best time because now voters are tuning in and now people are more willing to pay attention to Kamala's moves.
And do you really think it's going to have an impact, though, on the race? Do you really think that there's going to be a significant number of people who weren't registered, who register, who are undecided?
I think that Taylor Swift has a huge youth, like people that follow her, and I think that she's definitely going to impact those people, youth voters.
Did you guys hear the news that Taylor Swift endorsed Kamala Harris?
No, I did not hear that.
Do you care about that?
Not really, no.
Do you think it might impact the race for Kamala Harris in a positive way?
I think she's 100% big enough to impact the race. I mean, she's another Beyonce, right? Beyonce says the same thing and she'll have a bunch of followers, so.
All right, with that, everyone, let's bring in Sue live for us right now. Sue, obviously, people out there, people all across the country talking about this endorsement. The question is, will it actually have an impact? Will she actually be able to move the needle?
Right, Colton. Of course, we're not going to know until it's all over, but this race for president is neck and neck. But there is a data point that may give us a preview. In the first 24 hours after Swift's endorsement, 405,000 users, almost 406,000 actually, visited the site vote.gov. Now, that's a government site that includes information about how to register, how to vote, and how to cast a ballot. And it takes users to their state sites where they can register to vote. So does that number mean anything? Well, yes, it's 13 times more visits than the average day to that site. So obviously we don't know how many of those visits converted into actual registrations or if they'll convert into votes for Harris or for Trump. But again, in an election of inches, every single movement counts, Colton.
So some really, really interesting points of view that are there. Now, again, as we always do, we've got our research and everything. We've got an entire booklet today. So let's get straight into it. According to The Independent, Taylor Swift's platform now has got 23 million viewers or subscribers on Instagram, followers, and 95.2 million on X/Twitter. So what changed for Swift? Because again, she was very, very quiet about a lot of this stuff before and prior to aligning herself. Well, according to The Independent, her 2017 sexual assault trial against DJ David Mueller, and again, it was a case of Trump had very publicly personal attacks on Swift over the years. That certainly would have fueled this newfound desire to step into the political arena. Swift took to social media to throw weight behind Phil Bredeston, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, in his bid for Senate back in 2018. And she basically said, I cannot vote for someone who would not be willing to fight for dignity for all Americans, no matter their skin color, gender, or who they love, referring, of course, to Donald Trump. Now, there's a lot about this to unpack. And, her final statement was, under their leadership, speaking about Kamala Harris and Biden, she said, I believe America has a chance to start healing process it so desperately needs. Now, the concern that I have with this is I know for a fact that you could have scraped up two better candidates from your gangrenous big toe, America, just as we could have, United Kingdom, other than what you actually have. And because we're stuck with Starmer for what it seems like the foreseeable future, don't make the same mistake that we did. You've got Trump, you've got Harris. Neither one of them in my case, or neither one of them in my view, vote or anything like that. Based on what I've seen, which is extensive, I've watched the political debates with great interest, obviously, to present this show to you. Neither one of them, as far as I'm concerned, have the right or the honor to be president of the United States. Neither one of them acted with particular morals or ethics or anything to me that says, you know, we can actually put our trust in these people. Because the big question is, of course, Taylor Swift, this movement, from Harris's point of view, all seems to be about the youth movement. And that's massively concerning because, as we're going to talk about later on in the show, there seems to be a larger agenda going on here. Well, everybody's focused on the woke culture, the transgender culture, transphobia, you know, agoraphobia, biphobia, whatever other phobias are out there. The bigger game being played here is what's happening to the older generation. What's happening to the older folks in society of the West, both obviously in the UK, the US, Canada, going further afield as well into Australia and New Zealand, where I've got first-hand information that it's practically playing out in a very, very similar way. What's happening to them? Well, we'll talk about that later on, so don't go away because you're going to want to know what's happening, especially if you've got grandparents or older generations in your home, in your family, in your lives. So one of the concerning things with regards to Taylor Swift is she's a feminist, okay? Now, the very definition of that stems back to the 1850s with Mary Shelley, the author of Frankenstein. Again, it's so important to do your research and to actually be talking about facts rather than opinion, which is what we have now gone into this world of doing, which is, you know, well, my opinion's, you know, my opinion, I feel it, so it must be fact. No, you actually need to back it up with statistical numbers and everything that's there. So when feminism originally, you know, gets talked about and the origins of feminism and what people believe that they actually are talking about, they believe they're talking about equality for women. They believe they are talking about fair jobs, fair shakes, fair rules for women. They believe they're talking about the opportunities for everybody. In actual fact, what you're talking about is the fall and the desolation of the patriarchal society. You're focusing on the family, you're removing the familial society, the family society. The reason that people like Harris and the woke culture and whatever other culture that we're going to listen about later on today in Canada is having the impact that they are is because they're targeting children. They are targeting children. Why are they targeting children? Well, as you'll hear in one of the most stupid things that I've heard this week, you know, children are fine with it. There's no problem with children. Here's the thing. Unless you are molesting a child, unless you're physically hurting a child, as in causing pain to them, or if you are mentally frightening them and scarring them, a child will not turn around to you and say, well, no, this is wrong, because it's the world that they have encountered. And I've spent so much of this week literally putting my head in my hands and going, you will not believe what's coming up later on in the show. But the actual definition of feminism is that, you know, the true definition of feminism is being missed here. And to actually talk about this, let's jump into our next video so as you can see, first and foremost, what's really going on. I'm sorry, folks.
How do we destroy the family? By destroying the American patriarch. Well, this might shock you, because I also thought the same for a very, very long time, that the people who created feminism actually were nice people who wanted the best for everyone and just wanted equality. Okay, here's what really happened. So, Kate Millett, she was an American feminist, author, and artist. She is the founder of the National Organization for Women. Her sister, Mallory, was invited to one of the first meetings that established the National Organization for Women. So this is a feminist group that has been around since the start of the feminist movement, and they basically pioneered the whole movement. At this meeting, they gathered around a large table with Kate Millett, the chairperson, and she opened the meeting with the following back and forth recitation. So this is how the beginning of the meeting went. Why are we here today, she asked. To make revolution, they answered. What kind of revolution? The Cultural Revolution. How do we make cultural revolution? By destroying the American family. How do we destroy the family? By destroying the American patriarch. And how do we destroy the American patriarch? By taking away his power. And how do we do that? By destroying monogamy. And how do we destroy monogamy? By promoting promiscuity, eroticism, prostitution, and homosexuality.
Come on.
So this proceeded with a long discussion on how to advance these goals by establishing the National Organization of Women. Leader's sister says it was clear they desired nothing less than the utter deconstruction of Western society.
So that's what's going on. That's what's happening. That's the agenda, or one of the many agendas that's going on. Why you have so many children now with anxiety, with the feeling of depression, not necessarily just clinical depression, though that's existing, but the feeling of depression, which is more common in children and in teenagers. It is also why you've got a lot of children that are lost, that have no idea as to what they're meant to do, who they're meant to be, because they're just being told the narrative that be whatever you want, do whatever you want. You know, if you want to change this, if you want to change that, you just change whatever you want. And that's the narrative that's being reported here. So when I hear things like this, I'm very much aware, as many people are, that this is a spiritual battle that's going on. Remember last week when I said the Bible doesn't say anything explicitly about abortion? Well, actually it does. In one of the 10 Commandments, it says, thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not murder. Specifically, thou shalt not murder. Sometimes in the Old Testament, God asked people to kill for various reasons and things that was going on. You can go and check that out. That's a whole conversation for another time. But, thou shalt not murder means not having the destruction of children unless it is in the extreme exceptional case. To have 900,999,999 recurring women that are going and getting abortions in the United States alone, I think is absolutely disgraceful and deplorable. And here's the thing. If Kamala Harris gets into power, she is going to open up abortion centers all over the world. I am fairly certain, with the narrative that it is now the new birth control, that you are going to see more and more abortions taking place, more and more murders, more and more callous murders taking place, and more abortionists getting rich. And Taylor Swift has sided with that. Why she sided with that? Well, guess what? Because one of her roles, one of her views of the roles of Kamala Harris's office and Biden's office that she admired the most was for abortion, was for equality and pushing and furthering the agenda of the LGBTQI community. We're going to get into that later on, so don't misquote me. Don't take my words and say what they want. But folks, this is really serious. We're actually in a battle between good and evil right now. And dare I say it, I think, Donald Trump, quite honestly, represents the traditional working man and woman more than Harris. Harris is all about the young. She's all about the movement. She's forgetting the old. She's forgetting actually what really matters. America, you are in trouble. Believe me, I've seen what's happening with Starmer over here on the extreme left. We have a leftist woke culture, and you have to wake up, because if you do not wake up, literally, this will be the death of society. The crazy thing is, people criticize the Bible, they criticize the Quran, they criticize the Bhagavad Gita, they criticize, the Torah and all manner of other religious scriptures. But how many people are now waking up and saying, you know what? Society was that little bit better. It was that little bit more enjoyable for the masses on the whole, when actually people at least had some moral compass to go by. The sad truth is that humanity has become more about me and I, and not about the community anymore. Like even our next door neighbors, never see them, never really sit down and talk with them, couldn't tell you the first thing about them. Could not tell you the first thing about them. And there's a lot of people like that. There's a lot of people around in our community that are like that. Our alarm was going off at 2 o'clock in the morning several months ago. No one came to our help, and it was going off for over an hour. Guess what? The next door's alarm went off, and no one was coming to aid. No one was coming to alarm. This is the danger, is that we have to get back to spending time in community, spending time with one another, whether that's online, whether that's in person, it doesn't matter, but we have to get away from just this I culture. We're going to show you a video now of why it is so concerning that Taylor Swift has sided with Kamala Harris, why it's so concerning that it is the youth movement, why they're getting in the youth and the kids, why the culture is targeting the kids, because they're literally trying to get rid of the older generation, even my generation. They're trying to do a mass culling of these people, and you're going to see why later on. Check out this video, and we'll be back in a moment.
We're 7 weeks out from Election Day. Today is voter registration day, and the city of Philadelphia is making a concerted effort to register Gen Z and millennials. Celebrities like Berks County's own Taylor Swift are also encouraging the youth of the country to be civically engaged. And as CBS News Philadelphia reporter Waukesha Bailey shows us, young people are listening.
I'm voting for Kamala Harris.
When Taylor Swift speaks, more than 28 million people listen.
Because she fights for the rights and causes I believe need a warrior to champion them.
It's been just a week since the music icon took to social media, endorsing Vice President Kamala Harris following the presidential debate against former President Donald Trump.
Me and my mom were so excited that she was going to vote for her.
People underestimate how much of an impact Taylor has.
People who might be on the fence, wondering whether or not their vote really matters.
Parker Sheehan is president of Westchester University's club called the Swift Society. The club is made up of 200 Swifties. Inside the student union, we discussed all things Taylor Swift, including voter registration.
When you are looking at someone who has that level of fame, that level of following, you really do have to be really intentional with your words.
Secretary of Westchester Dems, also a Swiftie, says since the post, voters registration on campus is up.
As new generations are able to vote and older generations pass on, you will see a change in the culture. You'll see a shift in political ideals.
For me, as a young gay person coming into the world,
Swiftie Timothy Corbin was the only one out of the group to have met Taylor Swift. He believes celebrity endorsements could make the difference in battleground states like Pennsylvania.
She really said something so pivotal, which is just do your own research. I didn't read that post feeling like, oh, she's telling me one thing or the other.
Well, good morning, guys. So we are in one of 10 satellite offices here that the city is putting up to get people excited and registered to vote. Joining us in the next half hour, we've got Commissioner Omar Sabir, who is here with his staff, and they're also excited to get people on the ground running, getting ready to vote. And we're going to talk about teens as well as seniors. So, Jim Janelle, very excited to hear from Commissioner Sabir. Sending it back to you.
Thank you, Waukesha.
So that's a really interesting thing. She says that they're talking about teens as well as the elderly. I haven't heard anything with regards to her policies for the elderly. And there's a lot of stuff that she's coming out with that is contradictory to what is actually the truth and the fact. Donald Trump is no saint either. Like I said, you would be better scraping something out from your big toe, flushing it into something credible and literally having that run for president. And the same over here in the United Kingdom. So when we're talking about the LGBTQI rights, what are we exactly talking about? Well, as you might expect here, folks, I've got a little list. So there are some here that I agree with, okay? And there's others that I vehemently disagree with. So I'm just going to run down the list. Marriage equality, anti-discrimination protections, gender identity recognition, healthcare access, military service, asylum and refugee rights, education and safe learning environments, parental and family rights, protection from hate crimes. What else have we got over here? Sorry, folks. Freedom of expression, intersectional advocacy, youth protection and support, and equal access to public services and spaces. So there are things in here that I agree with. So youth protection and support, I'm a massive advocate for that because, again, a child who is going through maybe gender dysphoria, maybe is homosexual, maybe is lesbian, and whatever else exists out there, I think in a lot of ways does need protection because school can be a really hard, heavy, nasty place. The same when we're talking about the military service. Parental and family rights, often facing legal obstacles in adoption. Now, this is one of the things that I don't agree with because from my research, from many years ago, in fact, and it still is the case now, LGBTQI plus couples actually get preferential treatment. Now, this may not be the case universally. Someone, if again, I will hold my hands up, folks. If I'm saying something that isn't incorrect or is incorrect, then, you know, please tell me, fill in the blanks and everything else in my mind, because, you know, I'm not infallible, okay? I'm not the Pope for what that's worth. Neither am I Catholic. But yeah, but from my experience, preferential treatment will go to LGBTQI rights, because again, the societies that are providing children with adoption to these couples are looking for people like this. Marriage equality is something I absolutely vehemently do not agree with in the slightest. And the reason being is this: because if you are a practicing homosexual, a practicing lesbian, a transgender, you have, again, if you are reading and you really believe and you're going to a Bible-based church, and I'm not saying this out of some agenda, which someone said the other day, it's like, I don't align with any one, argument one way or the other, okay? I'm literally saying this as probably one of the first balancists that exist. But marriage equality, if you are someone who is walking with God, if you're someone that actually believes in God, then you believe homosexuality in terms of the act, in terms of what we were actually here and created to be and to do, is a sin against God. It's not right, okay? Because at the end of the day, and I'll be very blunt in saying this, okay? Now, we're not talking about the emotion. We're talking about your actual physical reason for being here on earth, which is to have kids, to further humanity. How do we know that? Because every other animal out there on the planet seems to have gotten this, but it's only human beings that literally will sit there and say, well, you know, I don't agree with this and I don't agree with that. Fine, I don't care what you agree with. I really don't. I'm speaking it from my perspective, what I actually know from a scientific point of view, from a theological point of view, from a biblical point of view, from an evolutionary point of view, from every other point of view that actually exists. Okay? And we have gotten into this. Now, does that mean that it hasn't happened throughout history? No, of course it didn't. It happens in the Bible. We've got Sodom and Gomorrah, which is something that we're actually living in and through now, believe it or not. But if you are literally someone who is in the woke culture, I'll settle down. If you're someone who's in the woke culture and you are a practicing homosexual, you are, you know, someone that's into group sex, you are a lesbian, you are transgender, you are doing something, like it or not, that is contrary to your actual purpose here on earth. And to ask a priest, a minister, a reverend, a rector, whatever, to bless that, which that, all the other Bibles around says is inherently, it's not your purpose for being here. It's not why you are here. I don't think anybody should be asking and putting a minister in that perspective. And guess what? I don't believe any godly church that exists. This is the reason that the church is in such a mess. Because you've got idiots running the church. You've got witless wonders running the church. The same bloody witless wonders that are running the country. And what you actually have is an ungodly church that believes itself to be godly. Now, when you put physical emotion into these things, I understand how a man can fancy a man. I can understand how a woman can fancy a woman. I can understand with gender dysphoria because I've spent the past 15 years working with people who have gender dysphoria, who have explained it to me. And I've concluded one thing every single time that I've worked with them, every single year that I've actually spoken about this. All of it comes down to a severe mental health and faulty narrative of themselves. That's what it comes down to. But you've got people out there that are crooked scientists that say, look, you got a problem. We can fix it for you. You are being played. Marketing works in a phenomenal way. As a psychologist, this is something we look at. Why do you think when you go into supermarkets that they play music for you? Oh, let's get all nice, relaxed. Oh, I feel good. Yeah, I'm feeling good when I'm buying my custard creams and putting them fat, or I'm getting my pound cake, or I'm getting my 25 bottles of beer, whatever it might be, the unhealthy stuff that you're going on. That is why music is played. That's why Taylor Swift's influence is so potentially poisoning, because those kids who don't know any better, that are Swifties, and all the adults that don't know better, that are Swifties. Literally, be aware. Be aware. Listen to the lyrics in her songs. All her failed relationships, how she can't get any guy to love her. And all the kids that are going along with it, like, yeah, this is wonderful. Hallelujah. You know? Be aware of what's going on. And this is why kids are so vulnerable. So vulnerable. I don't know which video to go to next, actually, because some of the stuff that's going on is just unbelievable in our society that you would not believe. In fact, talking of that, let's go to the Mummy, I Don't Want to Be a Boy video, because this is going to show you what's going on in Canada. It follows on a little bit later when JK Rowling has been accused once again and is now being taken to court, along with Elon Musk, of transphobia. Now, watch this and stick in the comments, actually, if you think there's something we do need to be afraid of. I'll be back in a minute.
A family can be made up in many different ways.
It's called SOGI, for sexual orientation and gender identification, a curriculum that teaches public school students across Canada to celebrate the homosexual lifestyle and that gender is fluid. In other words, your gender is not dependent on what parts you were born with, but rather what you feel like in the moment.
There's people that are boys, there's people that are girls. There are people whose gender might be a little bit of both or might even be neither.
Lessons include books about transgender children, such as 10,000 Dresses, and songs like The Rainbow Song.
Gender won't decide the choices we make. Some boys like dressing up, some girls like catching snakes.
The SOGI curriculum started in British Columbia in 2016 and is quickly spreading throughout Canada.
I just thought, who decided that this was okay to teach our children?
Author and inspirational speaker Laura Lynn Tyler Thompson is a leading voice against the SOGI curriculum.
And we are seeing the results of that now, because some kids are reacting very emotionally and saying, and they're in fear. Will I suddenly struggle with feeling like a different gender inside of my body?
Carrie Simpson of Culture Guard, another leading opponent, calls the curriculum nothing short of child abuse.
All those beautiful qualities that make young girls, beautiful girls and women, are being basically vilified. The things that make our boys boys are being, taken from them. So things of equating young men to being strong protectors is something that's now evil.
But Morgan Auger, a transsexual and supporter, claims it's about acceptance, not indoctrination.
The idea is to teach kids that there are gay kids and there are trans kids and there are trans parents and gay parents in our society, and everybody's wanted and desired. After all, that's what our Human Rights Code says, and it's the role of schools to teach the following of our laws, right?
Simpson disagrees, saying she sees SOGI's real goal as
altering our culture from a heteronormative society into one where anything goes, no boundaries, no values, no morals. It's a hedonistic cult, basically, what they're implying.
Another blaring example, drag queen story time. It's happening in Canada and America, where some public schools and libraries invite drag queens, some dressed like horned demons, to read to young children.
And it's a social deconstructionist agenda. They're using children, little 5-year-olds, to accomplish this. And parents are waking up and saying no.
When asked about parents' rights, Auger says,
well, actually, in Canada, parents' rights are limited and children's rights are put ahead. So the child has the right to be protected from the parents when the parents behave badly.
Canada is known as one of the most gay-friendly countries in the world, with many of their largest cities featuring their own gay villages, like here in Vancouver, which has literally rolled out the Rainbow Road.
Most gays, like village resident Dave Davy DiCarlo, support SOGI and limiting parental rights.
The change that we have to see is sometimes the parents, and the kids are doing actually really okay.
This is very scary stuff.
Longtime Vancouver area pastor Kevin Kavanaugh says this is far more serious than most Canadian Christians realize.
Our problem is not the teachers, the educators, the administrators. This is a battle in the heavenlies.
He says Satan is going after their most vulnerable, the children.
And the little girl came home in tears because the teacher had told her, since she was playing with some toys in the class that were deemed to be masculine in nature, that she was likely a boy in a girl's body. The mother went to the school the very next day, and instead of having any sort of tolerance or support or understanding, she was actually called names. She was told that she was a homophobe, that she was a bigot.
With that in mind, Tyler Thompson, Simpson, and Pastor Kevin are spreading their message across social media and in town hall meetings. The pro-gay backlash has been fierce.
And the hatred and the anger and the bullying that came against us, even though we said, we love you, we don't take from you the opportunity and the freedom to live as you choose. We love you, but we do not agree with you.
Pastor Kevin believes Canadian Christians are in a 2 Chronicles 20 moment.
The word was this battle is not yours, Jehoshaphat. This battle is the Lord's.
And the church is beginning to prepare for what it takes to fight for our kids.
The battle between an aggressive homosexual agenda and the faith community here in Canada is far from over. But many Christian leaders say it may be the issue that causes a once sleeping church to rise up and be heard. Wendy Griffith, CBS.
I think the church does need to wake up, rise up, and be heard, because for far too long it's actually sat there silent and doing very little. One of the comments that was made by one of the gentlemen in there, and quite frankly, Canada, I think you should be utterly ashamed of what's gone on and what you're doing to children. Like, how sick and perverse is the fact that this is going on? This has been allowed to happen. Do you see? Canada is extreme woke and leftist. Kamala Harris gets into the United States. They will follow. Here in the UK, it's already happened. There is your Western world, folks. There is your Western world. And if that's going on in Canada, it is already going on in the United States. You're just not hearing about it as much. And it is going on here in the UK. It is going on here in the UK. I can share with you personal stories of how we know it's going on here in the UK, and how I know for a fact that between 1,000 children and 10,000 children in the West are being taken out of schools every single year. Why could that be? They're vanishing from schools. Why could that be? Huh? Maybe it's because parents are waking up and saying, I don't want my child to be indoctrinated, to be messed up in the head, to be confused in the way that this is going on. Did you see some of those drag queens that was there? Literally, that was screaming like angels, or demons and serpents. It's like, no wonder people are terrified. And you're going to see more stories about this later on. I encourage you to stick around, because in the second half, folks, boy, we have got some really interesting stories that are going on. But to finish the original point that I was making before I got sidetracked, because I think it is important that you know what's going on, and a lot of people don't know what's going on. That's part of the problem. And please share this with your friends. Share this. Let them know what's going on. We'll break it into little snippets so you can stick it on reels. You can share with them. You know, anti-discrimination protections for the LGBTQI community. We're talking back to their rights and what they're looking for. Should they have discrimination against housing, healthcare, and education? No. That should be absolutely paramount, that they get healthcare, housing, education. Absolutely. Where it comes down to that they get jobs, again, that is very subjective, because if somebody is not right for the job and they're coming to you with, oh, I think I'm going to be a man today, and this is the face of your business, then sorry, folks, but guess what? You are going to struggle getting jobs. You are going to struggle getting jobs, because it's still this very traditional world. And my concern is that we are losing more and more of our traditional cause and values, or they're transforming into something that doesn't matter anymore. Gender identity recognition. You guys know my feeling on that at all. You know, again, as you'll hear from JK Rowling later on, you know, literally you're either a man or a woman. And, you know, to have, you know, a three-spirited penguin, or, you know, a major crocodile, or, you know, Snagglepuss, or Wizardora, the Aurora Explorer, whatever you want to call it, you know, no, sorry. Healthcare access, absolutely. Protection from hate crimes, absolutely. They should be for people that are LGBTQI. Parental and family rights. Now, you could say that for both, for normal, and by normal I mean usual pattern of behavior. We discussed that last week. Would I put a child in with a transgender, someone who quite clearly has, a lot of issues that's going on, potentially not without screening? Nowadays, that's, again, switching backwards and forwards. Education, safe learning environments, absolutely. Military service. Again, I think if I'm fighting in the military and I know I've got to take somebody's life, and I know my life may, be in the hands of somebody who may have mental health issues or whatever, but you could say that for anything. So I put a question mark next to that. That's, asylum rights and refugee. Yes, I don't think anybody should ever be persecuted in that way. Freedom of expression, I think, to a point, to a limit, as we talked about last time, because I think if we're not allowed to express ourselves as, balancists and rights, people that, are normal, that are not dressing up. And here's the other thing. I was talking about this with Katie the other day. Women often complain about how uncomfortable it is to wear women's clothing. They can't get the right fit. They can't get the right size. The knickers are up the backside, the bra, the wire in the bra and whatever else. So they often like to wear men's clothing. Here's the question then that I've got. If you've got a husband, a brother, a boyfriend, whatever else, that's been, a man, for all this time or whatever else, and all of a sudden they're coming out and saying, I really like wearing your bra. I really like wearing your knickers, with testicles hanging out either side, then you've really got to ask the question, are you psychologically sound? That should be your first tip off right there and then. And yes, I'm using tongue-in-cheek and humor with that, but genuinely some of the clothing that women have to wear or choose to wear is beyond me. Youth protection support, absolutely. And intersectional advocacy, we're talking about areas of social justice, particularly for marginalized groups. Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't think anybody should be discriminated against because of these things. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff that's there that I agree with, but equally there's a lot of stuff there, specifically the marriage aspect, that because it's not marriage. I don't care how you dress it up. Homosexual marriage, lesbian marriage, transgender marriage is not marriage in the eyes of God. You can delude yourself and you can conclude whatever the heck you want. I don't particularly care. But I'm telling you now, it's not. With that, we're going to move on because, as I alluded to earlier on, we spoke about what did we speak about? We spoke about the old folks and how they're literally being phased out, the matriarchs and patriarchs of our society, the wisdom, the older folks. And when we come back from commercial break, we're going to go to video. We're going to talk about them because over here in the UK, something has happened that is potentially disastrous for older generations and fits perfectly into the leftists' woke narrative. We'll see you in a moment.
Have you ever wanted to celebrate your fur baby in the best way possible? Something that you can treasure, something that captures the heart and soul of your furry friend? Well, look no further. With paintourpet.com, you have the opportunity to commission an amazing painting from internationally renowned artist John Morris. John has worked with literally hundreds and hundreds of clients from around the world. John's paintings not only have the ability to capture the heart and soul of each and every subject that he paints, but also has the power to evoke an emotional response from all who see his work. Now, if this sounds like the very thing you've been searching for to celebrate your fur baby in the most amazing way possible, then don't delay. Head on over to paintourpet.com today for a free, no obligation quote and to order your very, very own custom-made, hand-painted masterpiece. That's paintourpet.com. We look forward to hearing from you today.
Okay, folks, and we are back. So, something that's been happening that's really, really interesting in Parliament over here in the UK this week is how the winter fuel allowance, which basically covers the old year's heating and electricity bills, lighting bills, all that kind of stuff, has basically been cut by, essentially by the Labour and Parliament, essentially. They have their own reasons as to why they've done this, and many have actually come forward on public TV and said, well, we had to do this. And many TV presenters here on Good Morning Britain have actually turned around and said, no, you didn't, and no one was holding a gun to your head. This may share a little bit more with you as to why this is going on and why this is happening.
I mean, I do think this is the first serious unforced error that this government has made. It's not to say that there isn't a case for means testing the payment to pensioners, but actually, as I said, I've just had a whole number of what I regard as slightly surreal conversations with senior members of the government about why they did it. And one of the themes that they keep coming back to with me is that the Treasury said to them that if they didn't do this cut, it would lead to a trust moment, that the City of London investors would turn against them, that gilt prices would fall, that sterling would fall. And there are only two possible explanations. One is they're making it up, which I don't think they are. I think they genuinely think this is what some people in the Treasury said. If people in the Treasury said this, then this is frankly not the institution that it once was, because, I spend quite a lot of time talking to people in the city, and I've talked to people, people controlling really huge sums of money, billions and billions, about this. And when I say to them, would there have been a market reaction if Labour hadn't done this? They genuinely laugh. I mean, they think it's a nonsense. So, maybe the Treasury did say it. As I say, if they did, the Treasury's taken leave of its senses, or they had some ulterior motive, like they wanted to bully the government into doing this. I mean, I should be clear, the Treasury has wanted to scrap this universal entitlement for years. They think it's a bad use of money. They think means testing is a much better approach. Yeah. So it's possible that they tried to pull the wool over the eyes of the Chancellor, or maybe there was just a misunderstanding, except... And this is the bit where I literally thought the world's gone mad. So I see another senior Labour person yesterday who says that he's been told, and this is somebody I've known for years and I trust, he's been told that Rachel Reeves was advised by the governor of the Bank of England, Andrew Bailey, that they would put interest rates up if they didn't.
What?
I know. I mean, obviously it's mad. This is doing the rounds as a story that somehow Rachel Reeves was warned that if they didn't cut the universal entitlement to the fuel payment, that Bank of England would put up interest rates. Mad. It obviously didn't happen, but it sort of shows you, I suppose, to an extent, how bad the government feels about this, because literally every Labour MP thinks this was a mistake. The only reason they've voted for it is because they don't want to undermine the authority of Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves so early in the Parliament.
So it's got through by default then?
It's got through because a decision that didn't have to be taken was taken for pragmatic reasons. That Rachel Reeves wanted to show that she was tough. She wasn't just about giving money away, that she could also take money away. She felt a good look, but it's massively backfired. Almost nobody you speak to thinks the timing of the announcement was the right timing. But the problem is, when you get the world turning against you on these issues so early in the lifetime of a government, what becomes a sort of pragmatic decision then becomes an issue of principle, because what's on the line is the competence and the authority of the Prime Minister and the Chancellor. So at that point, they have to build this whole narrative that somehow this showed their intent to make unpopular decisions for the good of the country. And so they obviously just couldn't, they could not afford to lose the vote at this juncture.
And once again, we are in the Twilight Zone. So, again, surmising what you've just seen, every Labour MP disagreed with, and again, this is what's going on, disagreed with Rachel Green's, or Rachel Starmer's, Rachel, whatever her face was. Sorry, I kind of stopped paying attention when they started waffling about, some of the stupid things that Labour had done, but about Starmer's decision as well. And Yeah, I mean, it's like, really? I mean, I personally don't believe that Labour is going to last, the next 5 years. I really, really don't. And I'm going to move on momentarily because it's really important, obviously, that we do fit in the last topic for today. But what I found really, and I want to explore this a little bit with you and be really, really radical and probably extreme in my view here, but to explore something nonetheless. Why is this going on? Why is the entire left world going to the woke culture, going to the left side, in specific, the left extremes? Why is that going on? Why are they targeting the young? Why are the old, literally? And this was in another video, that the old are literally going to have no winter payments, so they're not going to be able to put on their heaters. They're not going to be able to put on their lights in some case. They're going to have to choose once again between, do we eat or do we have warmth? What? 2024? We're now in the best generation that anybody's ever lived, and old people are once again having to choose between putting on the heat or eating. Now, why could that be? I mean, let's explore something here. If you're really setting up a narrative and you're focusing on the young and it's a youth movement and everything, and the opposition to your leftist extreme wokeisms are the older folks and those that have a little bit of sway, well, you get those out of the way. How better to do it than a mass culling or a mass killing? Now, I'm just a lunatic from Scotland, apparently. Tongue in cheek. Don't use that in court. But here's the thing. Could it be? We see what's happened with the abortion laws. Mass abortion laws. Mass abortion is going on all over the United States. Could it be, as was suspected many years ago, that there is going to be a culling? Is this how they're going to do it? By freezing to death the old people? What do you think? Again, I know we've got viewers on watching. Don't sit there silent, folks. Stick some comments in on YouTube. Let's have some conversation. Let's see what's going on. What do you think is going on? What do you think's happening? Because for me, all of this fits a narrative, and I may have hit the nail on the head, but equally, I may be looked at as that lunatic that may get locked up very, very soon, because this is what tends to happen. Someone spots a narrative that's going on that they don't want other people to see, they don't want other people to know, and all of a sudden that person disappears. Just ask Jordan Peterson. This is the danger in going to a cashless society. But what's really concerning right now is the fact that this has gone through, this has been passed, nobody agrees with it. They all think it's lunacy and complete stupidity, but yet nobody's turning around and backing them and saying, oh, no, we can't have that. It's too early in your reign. Bollocks! Absolute bollocks. Starmer, Rachel, whatever your name is, you should be ashamed of yourself. You should absolutely be ashamed of yourself, because here's the thing. If I'm seeing it, other people have to see it as well. Other people have to see it as well. This is part of the problem. I made myself a note earlier on, because in her book, Exiling Eve, Rachel Merkel, her name is, she talks about feminism. She talks about, and this is something that we're so concerned about in many ways, but what I jotted down was this. These governments, they don't just get power in what is it, White Hill in the White House, or not Tower Hill, I forget what the name is, some famous hill in Washington. They don't just get power there. They don't just get power in Westminster. Guess where else they get power? The police, the schools, the fire service, the health service. In fact, every other service, the banks, those in power, in parliament, in government, in the United States, in the UK, in Canada, they filter down into everything. That's why we've got the nonsense books, the nonsensical, lunatic, psychotic, narcissistic, evil books that are being pushed on children. That's why you've got drag queens with their testicles hanging out. And I have a first account report from that from a friend of mine in the United States that this actually happened to her son in America, that this actually happened. Drag queen came in, was giving sexual education lessons, teaching children to masturbate with one another, basically knelt down and his nuts fell out. Must have been wearing a G-string that day, or maybe dental floss. I have no idea. You know, whatever's your poison. But the reality is, if this does not stop, our world as we know it is going to fall. Wayne Dyer used to say it best, in a round world, there is no taking up sides. On a round planet, there is no taking up sides. But I think in this instance, I would have to say that there is. Because there is stuff clearly in this world that is right and stuff clearly in this world that's wrong. And the narrative that's being reported right now, and you could say, oh, well, you just don't like the narrative. No, I'm for change if change benefits humanity. None of this benefits humanity. It's being used to molest and manipulate and confuse children in the most disgusting ways. And you know it is. You know it is. Not only that, but JK Rowling has once again taken to Twitter. She has been once again in the limelight. Her and Elon Musk are going to have their day in court with, I forget the Olympic athlete's name, and that's terrible. I was so enraged and incited by what was going on, I actually forgot about the person's name, so do forgive me. I want to say Caitlyn Jenner, but I don't think it's Caitlyn Jenner. But a lot of people now have been questioned whether or not JK Rowling should be defamed, dethroned, put in prison. This is why we need older folks. Check out this clip.
Can a woman have a penis?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me ask you guys, what are your pronouns?
She, her. She, her.
He, him. Okay, and so for people that don't understand what that means, what does she, her mean?
I'm a girl, and I, acknowledge myself as a girl.
Okay. Oh, okay, yeah, fine. So that you said she, her, didn't you? Yeah. And he, him?
I identify as a man.
Because you are a man.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess in my case, yeah, I was born a man. I've always felt like I'm a man. I've never really had a reason to oppose that.
So lots of people are very upset about this. You guys are all up to speed. Should JK Rowling go to prison for what she said?
No.
I don't think she should go to prison, but I think she needs to realise, what she's done is wrong.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, nobody can affect her liberty to make those comments, but she needs a certain awareness of what those comments stand for, what those comments mean, and the knock-on effect that they have on people.
With regards to the transphobic nature of the comments, that's the accusation put forward. What kind of, you said no to prison, what kind of punishment should JK Rowling receive? Because obviously it's gotten a bit heated now on socials. What would you suggest was fair? As a woman and as a feminist, I believe, JK presents herself as that, she's saying you're a man, you're not a woman. What sort of, how do we deal with that? What would you do?
Definitely not prison, but she shouldn't have the massive platform she does have. She shouldn't have that.
So deplatform.
Yeah.
I think she just needs to be educated in the language that she uses a lot of the time. Yeah.
I mean, I think the case with JK Rowling over the past few years is that she's massively dug herself her own hole. She has originally started out by saying things which people have regarded as controversial, and then it seems like she's completely swung to one direction of the field, which is predominantly transphobia. I think it's to her own detriment because now people are tarnishing, her famous book series as they're looking at it and they're going, actually, this is a very problematic in many ways, and she's not helped herself in that sense. And I think what would be better for her is that she acknowledged the things which she'd said and that they'd hurt people, and kind of tried to claim back from that and say, okay, I acknowledge what I've done, how can I change? But instead it seems like she's gone completely the other way.
Okay, so two things about this that really caught me. The first one was she needs to be educated in the language that she uses. She's a writer. She's a linguistic, which means she knows words. That's the first thing. The second thing is, and I've never, ever, ever said this to any teenagers in my life, but I'm going to say it now. Sometimes teenagers, children around the world, young folk, you need to shut your pie hole and actually understand that some of the older folks have been around long enough that we may actually know what we're talking about. And I say that with no remorse, no upset or anything like that. Because at the end of the day, sometimes we do. And I get when you're a teenager, you think you know it all. You think that you have it all figured out and all sussed and everything. Believe me, you don't. There will be stuff that you encounter in your life that right now, if you were to encounter it, you are not physically, morally, spiritually, ethically, mentally prepared for. You wouldn't survive it. How can I say that? Because I've been through it. And this is one of the saddest things, is these kids have so much prospect, and then they come out and say, a woman can have a penis. No, she cannot. A woman cannot have a penis unless it's a strap-on. And the problem is, from a psychological point of view, with this leftist narrative, as a psychologist in training, I could never say this, which is part of the reason that I would never, ever go to NHS clinical practice. I would never go down the route that Jordan Peterson has. I would stay a private psychologist for that simple reason, that I can give people the honest truth and the honest answer, rather than sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, am I going to have my license revoked? Or am I going to lose my job over this? Am I going to go to jail over this? Folks, you've got to wake up, please, and listen to what I'm saying. You think you're being nice, you think you're being cute, I don't know, maybe you've got some weird kinky pleasures that you're like, oh, well, if transgender comes on, I can have, my sexual fantasies of being both with a man and a woman, Where does this end? Are you going to go with children next? Where does it end? This is not blanket for all people of transgender. We're responding specifically to the videos that are going on and that are happening today. But it is really concerning. And what's more concerning is, I don't know that those young people have actually done enough research, because from anything that I've looked at, and I haven't had a chance to look extensively, and forgive me for that, folks. Please do. Maybe someone can fill in again my bank of knowledge, or lack thereof. But if I show you this clip, I don't see anything here that JK Rowling has meant to have said that is so horrible. In her first thing on June the 6th, so she's done 3 on June the 6th, if sex isn't real, then there's no same-sex attraction. If sex isn't real, the reality of women is erased. I love trans people, but erasing concepts of sex removes the ability of many to meaningful discussions about their lives. It isn't hate to speak the truth. I felt in some ways with one of my dearest friends, and I'm going to speak about a very personal story here. I debated whether to do this or not, but I have a friend of mine who is going through the process right now from becoming female to male. I've known this person since they were a child, and I've loved this person because their energy is wonderful. Them as a person is a kind of heart you would never ever want to meet, or you could never meet. They were just a phenomenal person. First, they came out as bisexual, and I found that difficult to deal with because, again, I hadn't been exposed to a lot of bisexual people, 10, 15 years ago. When I found out this person was then going through the transgender process, and I spoke with the person at length about this, the levels of mental health issue that was there, they had been interfered with as a child by a man. The man, I believe, had gotten away with it. They then had other sexual experiences from 12 years old onwards, which naturally skews your view of the world. It had gone so far as I had to sit there for the sake of the feelings of my friend. I had to literally wrestle with that when they said that they were a raging homo. Their words, not mine. I had to sit there and I did the research. I was like, what does that mean? It means a man who likes another man or many men. I was like, you're not a man. And you can go and have your breast chopped. You can go and have a penis that you've got to erect with a button under your flu or whatever. You can go and have your body mutilated. But at the end of the day, as the book Eve in Exile, Rebecca Merkel talks about, if you were to do a DNA sample, it would show you're a man. If archaeologists dig up your bones 2 million years from now, slight stretch, and did bone grafts, it would show you're a man. You can change what you become, but you can't change who you are. You can't. That's why a woman cannot have a penis unless it's a strap-on, unless it's a detachable one. You can delude yourself. And the problem is humanity. Folks, you're playing in to the delusion by trying to help these people. You're not. You're really, really not. And we are at risk here. There is something more serious and severe going on than how you identify. There really, really is. We're at the point where we may actually lose humanity here. Further than what JK Rowling had said, just pause that. The idea of a woman like me who's been empathetic to trans people for decades, feeling kinship because they're so vulnerable in the same way as women, i.e. to male violence, she knows a lot about that, of course. Hate trans people because they think sex is real. They think sex is real and has lived consequences. It is nonsense. True. Absolutely true. It's like, someone who's been friends with people of color and different race all the time, now being called racist and whatever else. And the final comment, obviously, of what she said, I don't know if you guys can see this, but I respect every trans person's right to live any way that feels authentic and comfortable to them. I'd match with you if you discriminated against on the basis of being trans. At the same time, my life has been shaped by being female, and I do not believe that it's hateful to say so. Absolutely isn't. Women have fought for so long and for so hard to have their voices heard. And guess what? Their voices are now being drowned out by what? A man thinking it's a woman. And the sad thing about this is it's majority women. And they've said this themselves. So I say this again with no issue, with no worry, with no fear, because the research is there. That's what covers my back. But women have actually said the reason that so many of these wokest things are going on and are happening is because women are actually pushing them. Men aren't. Men can't now, because literally if you do, it's toxic masculinity. Well, then I'm a toxic male because I'm speaking the truth. I'm speaking sense. I'm speaking fact. And here's another little sort of snippet on top of your cream bun. Why is it that for the past however long, let's see, where does the Bible start? According to the NLT, let's just go with that. I don't have the numbers right in front of me. I think this is important detail to get right, because I just need to just bear with me. You start in the Old Testament. It's a good place. Genesis. Okay, so we're talking 1400 years to 1410 BC, which means before Christ or before the Common Era. Okay, and it was written apparently by Moses. Okay, so 1450 years before Christ, you've got the Genesis story. Now, obviously, time goes much further back. Let's say Adam and Eve existed 10,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago. The world's been around for 4 billion years. So, it's completely plausible. Here's the thing. I want someone to answer me this question. Why is it that the people up until, say 2016, 2015, 2014, every single one of them got it wrong for what it means to be a male and to be a female? We've all got it wrong. We've got it wrong, folks, because apparently the Western world, or the woke cultures come in. They know what it means to be male and to be female, and now it needs to be redefined. It needs to be redefined. It's complete lunacy. It's completely lunacy. If you have a penis, you're a man. If you've got a vagina, you're a woman. Why is that so difficult? Are we literally sitting in a world now where we've got nothing else to do, where we're so comfortable that now we sit there and we say, you know what? I'm really bored today. I think I'll identify as, as a dog. I think I'll identify as a cat. I'm going scratching kitty litter boxes, and I think I'll meow when teachers and the teachers have to play along in this fantasy. That's why they don't want Donald Trump in there. Don't get me wrong, Donald Trump has done some insane things. He's been accused of some insane things. True or not? Jesse Ventura hasn't been accused of these insane things. And if he's still alive in the next presidential election, that could be your future president. Because he's actually someone, yes, old, possibly older than Biden by that point. But he's someone that might actually have his head screwed on right. Isn't that an interesting concept? I got one more video to show you, and then I know we're running over here. We're probably going to go to the 90-minute mark today. So... yeah, enjoy. But this is, again, wrapping up the JK Rowling thing, and then we're going to finish off with what the woke culture, what's good about the woke culture, and what's bad about the woke culture. And I think it's really important to know the difference between the two. So we're going to throw over to Piers Morgan now, as he's talking about some very interesting things that aired with a new JK Rowling book. Check this out. There for a moment. Cancel culture is not a myth. Just ask Elon Musk, just ask Jordan Peterson, dare I say it, just ask Andrew Tate. It is not a myth. It is actually happening, and just ask me. Because when COVID was coming out, and we were reporting on stuff that was actually factually based, and everything that was really going on with Pfizer, with Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, all the others, yeah, we were in some pretty hot water at that point. But the fact as well, again, this is the danger of taking opinion over fact. And the fact that this Benjamin, whatever his face is, I think one of the guys actually calls him Benjamin Button later on. But actually, the fact that he's condemning a book that he hasn't even read himself is okay. Here's the other thing about it, folks. I don't know how well you know the Jack the Ripper stories, but I do. I know them incredibly well. You'll see why later on. Not in this show, but down the line. And here's the thing. Jack the Ripper was thought, actually, with some degree of basis, to either be a woman or to be someone who dressed like a woman. So it would make complete logical sense. And as Piers Morgan goes on to say, and we won't see this particular part of the clip, you can go and watch it on YouTube, but it goes on for about 10 minutes or so. But it's an interesting watch. But the fact is, he goes on to say it would be acceptable for a trans person to watch or to write about something where a transgender murders somebody, but it wouldn't be acceptable for someone like Piers to do it. Again, is lunacy. It really, really is. And I had a point there. It's just gone out of my head. Let's continue. Interesting that all this fuss and all this craziness is being, thrown out and literally shouted and bawled about, and it's not actually factually true. Isn't that interesting? How again, cultures, and not just the left, the right has also done this as well, where they've not looked factually at what's going on and what's happening. That's part of the reason these shows are getting longer and longer, is because we're actually dealing with in fact. But it's just all right. So yeah, we'll stop that there, because I know we're running out of time here, and I'm getting notifications. But what it really comes down to is, unfortunately, so two things. The first thing is, I can understand from Benjamin's point of view how trans people have been horribly, horribly treated. Okay? That is a fact. They've been horribly, horribly treated. Not universally, But in a lot of situations, and I can cite case studies and out of my ears, I've got a folder over there full of them, on how people have been punched, how people have been abused on trains in the United States. One guy looked like he was dressing like a woman because he had very, very short shorts on, kind of women's shorts, and was basically punched in the face, spat on, hit, all that kind of stuff. That should never, ever, ever happen. That should never happen anywhere to anybody. Nobody ever has that right. But what we're talking about here is these extremes that are existing. And this is the problem. And I can understand from Benjamin's point of view, that he cites and all these other people. What other people? Again, if you're going to cite other people, speak, name them. What people is it that you're referring to, Benjamin? You may see this, in which case, go ahead in the comments. What is it you're referring to? What it comes down to, I can understand his fears. I can understand the concerns that are there. But I think, to do R.I.P. JK Rowling, what that means is she's dead. For those of you that need it spelling out, which shouldn't be many of you, is heinous, is absolutely heinous, ludicrous. And it's gotten to the point where now you have to really consider, has social media been a good thing overall? Or is it time that that's rethought as well? We're out of time to share the rest of that clip, but as I said, we may just put it up on YouTube for you so you can see it for yourself. But if you want to go and see it, obviously do. It's Piers Morgan. Just type in Piers Morgan, JK Rowling. One thing I do want to do just before we finish, just put a bow on this show today. I know we've gone way over time in this. The things that are good about the woke culture, because a fellow on TikTok actually asked me, what is so bad about this woke culture? And I think it's really important because I don't think many people, if any, have actually dived deep into what's going on. So let's start with what's good about the woke culture. Well, you've got increased awareness of social injustice, advocacy for marginalized communities, promoting equality and inclusivity, challenging harmful norms and stereotypes, holding powerful entry accountable, fostering change through gradual movement, supporting mental health awareness, creating safe spaces, driving social and legal change, encouraging empathy and compassion. Yeah, there we go. So there's 10 things that I was able to find that was listed as positives. And a lot of those I absolutely agree with. I don't think anybody, I know we talk about, things in a humorous way from time to time. And I think sometimes you have to be able to talk about this in a humorous way. I think that's one of the things people are so afraid of. You can't talk about things in a humorous way. Ricky Gervais makes a great living at it. The reality is, if I saw a homosexual being beaten in the street, I would run to their aid. If I saw a transgender, even one like what we saw in the schools in Canada, I would run to their aid. That is just what's fundamentally right. And beating people because they're different is never fundamentally right. So I absolutely agree with the increased awareness of what's going on. I think that's important. But again, I look at it now with all of the battles that are being faced in the world, asking where I'm going to place my focus, where I'm going to place my attention, what's really important. And I'm not saying that issue isn't important. We've spent 90 minutes talking about it. But what I'm saying is it the most fundamentally important issue that exists? Advocacy for marginalized communities, yes, to a degree, but I think, again, we're talking about here who have emerged from the woke culture, brought global attention to racial injustice, sexual harassment, and gender-based violence. Yeah, I think that's important that is known and is aware, because, again, it's never acceptable. Equality and inclusivity, fundamentally, yes. I think when it's exploited and when it's taken advantage of, either way, from the left or the right, I think absolutely it's wrong. But fundamentally, I fully agree. And again, everything else, I think everything that I saw there, supporting mental health, creating safe spaces, driving social and legal change. Again, I would be careful because, again, they look at same-sex marriage, don't agree with that in the slightest. Workplace discrimination and police reform have been advised more strictly due to activism rooted in the culture. I think, again, that's all things to take and to be aware of. I don't think that it would be something, and again, I think we all need to be sensitive to one another. If you are in the woke culture, I know you've probably listened to this entire thing and you're thinking, well, this guy's just an a-hole and he's not actually that empathetic and stuff. Believe me, I'm more empathetic than you probably realize with regards to this. Otherwise, I wouldn't be talking about it. But if you turn up in the military and you want to dress in sparkle, flower power, stuff, you become a health hazard. You become a health risk because no longer are you invisible. If you want to, run around and prance around, and I'm just saying stereotypically, again, I'm just saying that it's there. People do this. People are out there. That's when you become dangerous. And you have to think about that. It's not just your life. It's not just people accepting you. It's you accepting them more than anything. So I think there's certainly a lot in there that obviously we certainly agree with for sure. What's the negative about the woke culture, and we're going to end on this, is the over-policing language and behavior. We talked about that last week in Rowan Atkinson's obviously conversation and his presentation that he gave. Division and polarization, yes, it has divided massively. It really, really has. Stifling free speech and debate. Apparently, I ain't got that problem. But if police come to my door, folks, and I'm suddenly not here next week, you know why. Even though many of you probably won't bother. Yeah. But you know why. Virtue signaling. Some believe that that woke culture encourages performative activism where people express outrage or support to morally superior. Yeah, I can see that. I can absolutely see that. Lack of nuance in terms of its overtly rigid, its moral judgments, leaving little room for nuance, context, or personal growth. It's basically, as the old statement goes, I'm queer and I'm here. And you have to accept it, which is one of the things that I really struggle with as a youth minister. When you've worked with these kids all of their lives and a massive portion of yours, to suddenly have, people coming out as homosexual or gay or bi or whatever, and you have to accept that that's who they are. It was very, very difficult. And I really, just be frank with you, it's destroyed, I think, more families than anything else. I don't think it's just been a good thing at all for our world. Unintended consequences in academia and art. Well, that's obvious. I mean, academia is limited only by the frame. Sorry, art is limited only by the frame. It was G.K. Chesterton that said that. And I think that's the thing. When artists start being told that they can't paint, they can't create films, they can't create media, write books because of offending somebody, and the work of fiction, which is what the Piers Morgan clip goes on to talk about. I don't ever think that's right. You have to write what you write, and I won't be silenced. I will not be silenced. But here's the thing: I know where the fantasy of my characters end, and I know where reality sets in. I'm John Morris, the author, potentially writing about John Morris, the character, because I find myself rather interesting. And it's sometimes fun to do. We all imagine ourselves in different worlds, different places, different times. Sometimes that's really fun to do. But I won't be told, no, you can't do this, and no, you can't say that. Even if that means going to prison, I still, absolutely. Overshadowing important issues and moral absolutism. Yeah, there's nothing on there that I disagree with. That has been the negatives of the woke culture, and nothing really that I disagree with regards to the good things in some ways that has come out of the woke culture. The woke culture actually started, I found out the other day, and I know we've run out of time, but the culture actually started in Black Lives Matter, and that was fascinating where it actually began and what it originated from and what it's developed into. Maybe we'll get onto that sometime, but yeah. We're out of time, folks. So I want to thank you all for watching and staying with me for the past 90 minutes. It's been a long show. We've covered a lot of stuff on here. And if you're watching this on the replay, I say good luck to you. If you're interested in mental health mentoring, our practice is now open again online, so we can work with you wherever you are in the world. Do get in touch with us at thejohnmorris.co.uk. You can see the information there. and we'll be more than happy to help get you from where you are to where you want to be. Come and visit us at thejohnmorris.co.uk anyway, because we've got some really awesome stuff that's taking place over there. And if you are on social media, come and visit at the John Morris 101 on TikTok, and basically at the John Morris everywhere else you'll find me. But yeah, and if you're ready, of course, for changing your mental health, then you can check out my best-selling book, The Battles We'll Face. It says it's on YouTube. It's on YouTube, is it? No, it's actually on Amazon. It's on Amazon right now, and you can go and check that out. It's a phenomenal read, really simple to read. You can see it over there, over my left shoulder. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, folks. Tell a friend, because it could be the very thing that they need to hear in their hour of struggle. And until next time, take care. God bless. We are out of time. I need to cool off. Thank you so much for watching. Take care.